Hi, I'm Colleen Pearl, the Cool Crone, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is all about the US Pluto Return taking place in exact configuration on February 20th. On February 20th, 2022, Pluto will come into exact conjunction with the natal placement of itself in the USA chart. It has been coming towards this alignment for years, since 2008. When Pluto makes a natal return, the country feels it. Humans cannot experience a Pluto return because it takes 246 to 248 years to come about. Pluto is at the far reaches of the universe and is prone to going retrograde frequently. So it's hard to make a rule about its orbit, but generally, we have come to see that it comes in at about 246 to 248 years. Pluto is difficult to track and it's hard to predict timing-wise because it is so powerful, so intense, and human beings begin to feel the transits long before they become exact. This is the chart of when Pluto went into Capricorn in 2008. The mortgage bubble had been allowing people to buy houses with mortgages they couldn't afford. This Pluto coming into Capricorn doesn't happen until November 26th, 2008. But in March of 2008, Bear Stearns collapsed, followed in September by Lehman Brothers. And that fall, the government had to decide how to deal with imminent failure of major banks and other lending institutions, and to top it off, it was an election year. Welcome to the White House, Mr. Obama. There was a bailout of the car, banking, and airline industries, but the American citizen struggled through the subsequent Great Recession for years. And Pluto had not even aspected any planets in the U.S. chart yet to an exact degree. It was, however, approaching the following aspects: an opposition to Venus and Jupiter, both of which pertain to money, monetary systems, currencies, and worldwide influence. A sextile to the natal moon. So where's Pluto? Here's Pluto, and it's 60 degrees away from the natal moon of the United States. And moon means mother, nurturing, our moods, our homes, our families, children, travel, and changeability. And a quintile, which is 72 degrees with the asteroid Juno, which rules relationships, home, and marriage. So this proves my point. Even without the aspects coming into perfection, Pluto was profoundly affecting our country in the areas of finance, housing, banking, and transportation. Many giants in those industries were deemed too big to fail, and Congress feared that the calamity might only be worse if they were allowed to. In 2008, we saw massive layoffs across the board, and Americans just had to tighten their belts while watching major corporations get bailouts from their government. Only countries who have survived for longer than 246 years ever experience a Pluto return, and the aspect usually leaves them greatly changed. Pluto rules death and rebirth, influencing the end and beginning of new karmic cycles. It also rules things like interpersonal skills, power struggles, and shows the source of your personal power. Power dynamics in this country had been coming to a head for years and finally boiled over in 2021 when citizens who were learning a thing or two about what was important to them from the pandemic started to tell their employers, "I'm out of here." Millions decided that they just weren't going to take it anymore and walked into new jobs where they were rewarded with bigger paychecks, more respect, and the ability to work remotely. Their freedom was much more important to them than their old employers. Employers in industries who typically pay a lower wage are still finding it difficult to replace these workers, and in many areas, labor is lacking. We need hospitality workers, scientists, mathematicians, healthcare workers of all kinds. That's doctors, nurses, and all the attendant ancillary professions in the healthcare field. Teachers, electricians, carpenters, machinists, mechanics, welders, plumbers, engineers, architects, IT specialists, technicians in health, telecommunications, and the environment, drivers, construction workers, and mining workers, counselors, therapists, and social workers. In short, everybody figured out how to have a job and still live a beautiful lifestyle without working for a shitty boss. As goes the USA, there goes the world. The Pluto return will mean that we finally understand and experience a true constitutional crisis. Our most profound and well-known document will be examined even more than it has been, but this time with an eye towards what really needs to be reworked. We will not complete it in February, but no matter. We will be reminded by Pluto itself that this must be done around July 11th and again December 29th. There's no getting away from it. Pluto is not that kind of planet. This will be a powerful return. Now, when France had its most recent Pluto return, and I believe it's had 3 or 4 in its lifetime as a republic, we had the death of Napoleon, 1821. When Russia had its most recent Pluto return, we had the death of Stalin. When Spain had its Pluto return in 1972, which was its most recent Pluto return, General Franco relinquished power. Now, I will talk about the 3 Pluto returns of England, mainly because it's our mother country. So, England has had 3 Pluto returns, 1310, 1555, and 1800. In 1305, there began a period of blood and bullying between England and Scotland. Edward I was on the throne and became known as Hammer of the Scots. Ultimately, Scotland had to bend the knee around 1310, but continued to fight for its independence, which took about 30 years to achieve. After this resounding defeat, England went on to colonize the rest of the planet. That's all. King Edward I was definitely a Plutonian bully, and he wielded his sword and might for all to see. They had another Pluto return in 1555, and this return saw the monarchy in crisis after King Henry VIII's death. Henry himself came to epitomize Plutonian energy with his beheadings and such, while the kerfuffle around the crown ultimately saw his oldest daughter, Mary, ascend to the throne and become the bloodiest monarch we had ever known. After Mary's death, Elizabeth, Mary's half-sister, ascends in 1558, becoming a much beloved ruler and reigns for almost 50 years, restoring peace and civility throughout her kingdom. Next, we have the Pluto return in England of 1800. Now, in 1800, England joins the United Kingdom, and we saw the flag of England morph into the one we know today. The Union Jack, which is a combination of the flags of England, Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. Also, in 1800, taxation is introduced as a means of supporting the kingdom's war efforts, and the Pluto themes of wealth and control over the masses takes place. I'll read these cartoons. They're pretty funny. An inquiry concerning the clock tax. And it says, "Please, Your Honor, I am a delegate from the worthy and respectable Society of Hosiers to know whether Your Honor means to extend the new tax in clocks upon stockings." So he was worried about stockings. And then we have this gentleman bending over and saying, "Just stopping in, Your Honorable Ladyship, for the window tax." And she says, "I think, good man, you are always stepping in for something or another to take money out of my pocket." Now back to the USA. So, a Pluto return, despite my picture here, is not always about death and destruction. It can also focus on wealth, taxes, debt, the masses, cleaning up corruption, and spirituality. Pluto does rule death, transformation, and rebirth. However, Pluto is essentially a plow. It plows up the truth about organizations or entities or people and shows us the dark underbelly, the corruption, if there is any, and the weakness in the foundation. Where it finds corruption, deceit, or weakness, it destroys completely so that a new organization or entity can be built. For you and me personally, Pluto causes one to look inward to their soul and make huge decisions about their life in order to progress towards enlightenment, or sink into a more corrupt or even just mundane type of life. In other words, with Pluto, you have a chance to live your life purpose with a higher meaning in mind. But you do have choice. And you can just as easily live life doing the most expedient thing to make money or acquire more power. The person who chooses the latter usually ends up paying a very high price for that power and/or money. The person who chooses the higher purpose usually ends up quite satisfied at the end of their days. Now we come to a chart of the Pluto return for February 20th, 2022. This is an overlay of the transiting planets in green on the outside and the USA chart on the inside. The US Pluto is in the second house for finance, talents, and values. So it would not be surprising if Pluto cleaned up the corruption of finance in this country and allowed true talent and good old USA values to be celebrated and at least given a chance to flourish in the country. We may even see an equalization between the races and a removal of all the old Jim Crow laws. But I'm an optimist. Right now, so many industries, including our government, are so rife with corruption that you really can't succeed by talent alone. At the time of the birth of the USA, people wanted to avoid the taxation by the crown, as well as wanting to form a government that would offer them representation so they could have more of a say in the way their country was run. These two desires brought the conflict between the UK and the US, resulting in the signing of the Declaration of Independence and a long, bloody war. However, the war started up by the 13 colonies began in 1775, so the signing of this esteemed document happened during the Revolutionary War, and was actually written by a committee of just 5 men, of whom Thomas Jefferson wrote the lion's share. So at this time, Pluto was working its magic with the colonists and exposing the unfair relationship between the colonists and the British Crown, inspiring the colonists, especially John Adams of Massachusetts, Ben Franklin of Pennsylvania, Thomas Jefferson of Virginia, Roger Sherman of Connecticut, and Robert Livingston of New York, to declare themselves independent of British rule. The war was in full swing when the first meeting of the Continental Congress was held in response to the British Coercive Acts. Read the room, guys. A series of measures imposing the new taxes on the colonists. Oh boy, they really didn't see it. The Congress involved representatives from all 13 colonies and generally agreed that they would no longer pay or put up with the Crown's demands. Thus, the United States of America was born amid the Revolutionary War. So let's review the topics for the USA and Pluto: taxation, government representation, social justice, money, and spirituality, or finding your higher purpose in life. These issues will also be at work with our current Pluto return. Remember that. The themes will be the same. The outcome will be different because our world is now different. In 2022, Pluto will be at the conjunction mark for most of the year because of its slow movement. But on February 20th, July 11th, and December 29th, it will perfect to the exact minute of the natal placement. Not that astrology is known for predicting things to the day or even the week of when they will happen. It's always a little bit off. Astrology works best if you look at the range of dates in which a particular aspect occurs. If your brain were able to grasp all the aspects at once, all the points, all the signs, you could easily note the trends and influences going on and see when things would happen. But we are human, so we usually focus on 1, 2, or possibly 3 things at a time and try to make our predictions. It's not an exact science. The square between Saturn and Uranus, which had its last perfection on Christmas Eve 2021, softened the ground for change. For the last decade at least, we've had nothing but conflicts surrounding the issues of taxation, money, and social justice. And now, with voting restrictions being imposed in 19 of our 50 states, we are facing even more social injustice than we saw in the Jim Crow era. By the way, 49 of our 50 states introduced voting restriction legislation, but only 19 of those states allowed them to pass. In February, the U.S. will have Pluto lining up with its natal position on the 20th, and we will also have Neptune opposing its natal position on the 22nd. This makes things very, very interesting because our belief systems, our fantasies, our charitable leanings, our ability to spot a scammer will all be tested, as well as all the other Pluto stuff happening. Now, I'm optimistic about the Pluto return. I think this may be a time when we see that the tide has turned, that the majority of people and politicians want peace and harmony in our country and want to return to the principles stated in the Declaration of Independence. It's not all going to change this year. It will most likely take until early 2024 for us to see concrete changes to our Constitution. But along the way, we will see laws and politicians change a great deal. We will see obstructionists brought to heel, and in general, we will see our country making changes for the better. So that's what I have to say to you about the Pluto return for February 2022. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing. Please give this a thumbs up and leave me some comments down below. I look forward to hearing them and doing more videos for you like this in the future.